Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to Academic Writing Amplified. My name is Kathleen Mazak, and I am your host. Today we're talking about publishing for promotion. So I really want to get into the mindset around publishing for promotion and a little bit of the reverse engineering logistics to make that happen. Before I get started though, I want to say I'm so excited to welcome our latest cohort of Navigate members. Our summer cohort is formed, and I'm so excited to get started with that program. Now, if you are a regular listener to my podcast, you will note that I talk about my Navigate program a lot. And I was recently kind of looking at the reviews on Apple Podcasts, and really the only thing that takes a review down from 5 stars is people complaining that I'm advertising, I guess, which I would say, yes, I talk about my program. So I want to kind of acknowledge that and give you some kind of hints of what I do on my podcast that advertise things that either I've already bought or that I'm just not going to buy. And I also want to say I am going to take that feedback and try to do a more contained advertising pitch. And also I want you to know that sometimes there are episodes, and you should be able to tell from the titles, that are just straight going to talk about the Navigate program, like the Navigate info session audio release that came out a few weeks ago. And so if you don't want to hear about Navigate, please just skip those and go on. There's so many episodes, of over 200 episodes. We're headed towards 225. So there's plenty of options for content for you to listen to. Now, if you love this podcast, please go to, especially the place that reviews help us the most is actually on Apple Podcasts. So if you could go and leave a review there, it would be really, really helpful. And I want to let those of you, or the person or a couple of people who have said, oh, I wish you would stop advertising on her podcast, I do want to just address that real quick before we get into publishing for promotion. So here's what I do on my favorite podcasts when there's ads. I fast forward through them. Unless it's something that, I know I'm interested in, I just use the little 30 seconds forward or 15-second forward button and just go through them real fast. You don't have to listen to the ads. So to facilitate that going forward, I can't say exactly when I will implement this, but in the next few weeks, I will be putting what's called a mid-roll or a mid-reel ad in the podcast. And it'll be clear that I'm going to talk about Navigate, and it'll be short as well. And, we just fast forward through it. And that way it's a little bit more contained. Now, I do, when I'm talking, whenever I'm talking about anything, I talk about, and here's what we do in our Navigate program related to that, because it is, I think, the best thing that I've ever created. And I know that some people think everything should be free, but I think that I'm giving a nice balance of free help through this podcast. It's free to you. It's not free to me. I pay an editor and it costs my labor. And then also a paid version of a program that I think is the best program out there in higher ed. So really like the best program in professional development for professors. And of course, I'm going to talk about that and kind of relate it to the things I'm saying on the podcast, but it's just for your information. And I will make an effort to contain any more like ad sounding things into something that's kind of signaled so that if you're not interested in hearing it, you can just hit that little fast forward button and just pop ahead a couple of 30 seconds at a time. And hopefully that will address that feedback. Again, it would be super helpful to me if you go on to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. If it's a 5-star review, even better. And I appreciate all of you listeners. So much fun. Okay, so let's talk about publishing for promotion. Now, a lot of times, like on this podcast, I talk a lot about publishing to get your voice out into the world, because I really think that the bottom underlying motivation for writing kind of needs to be that intrinsic, like, ooh, I have something to say, I have something to contribute, because that intrinsic motivation is going to get you farther when you are exhausted and all of that. But there is certainly the extrinsic motivation of publishing for promotion. Now, I'm going to talk about the US and Canada tenure system, but please apply what I'm saying to whatever system you're in. And I also acknowledge that the tenure system kind of varies within the US and Canada. So, please adapt what I'm saying to whatever your specific, the idiosyncrasies of your own university's promotion system are. Oh, and also I want to say, I'm very excited that coming up on the podcast, starting in the middle of May, I'm going to be doing a series about the stages of the academic career. And I'm going to break it down into what I think, not the received stages, the real stages of the academic career are, and how you are thinking about your writing and publishing during those stages, and how you should be thinking about your writing and publishing during those stages. And I am looking forward to creating that for you. And that will be another kind of layer of insight, I hope, that addresses this question of how do I want to think about my publications when I'm publishing for promotion? Okay, all of that said, in the general US and Canada tenure system, when you get a tenure track job, you have, usually it's between 5 and 6 years to go up for your first promotion. And usually tenure is associated with that promotion. So tenure is a strange word for permanency, or gets hard to fire you after this. Okay. So tenure is not always hooked to promotion to associate professor, but it often is. And so that's happens within the first 5-6 years of your work at the university. Now, many universities will have checkpoints along the way to promotion. Not all, but many will have a first year review, a third year review, and then you'll go up. Okay, so what will happen is you will have these little checkpoints along the way, potentially. Sometimes you don't. And you'll get feedback about where you are, if you are kind of on track for promotion. That happens between assistant and associate, but it doesn't really happen after associate. Or if it does, it's a rare case I've actually never heard of, that when you go from associate to full, that there might be checkpoints. I actually remember at my university, you had to submit, and then after you got full, you were supposed to submit some certain paperwork, an updated CV and all of these things, every 3 years. No one ever did it. No one ever did it. Ridiculous. So anyway, from associate to full, there is a question mark amount of years in most places. Sometimes there will be kind of a minimum amount, but no maximum amount. So it's very different from that first promotion where you have to go up after a certain time unless you get an extension for health reasons or whatever. A lot of people got extensions for the pandemic. So this is all to say that you have kind of a assistant to associate push with your publications so that when you go up for associate professor, when you go up for tenure, you have usually a certain number of publications. Now, I want to talk about that moment of publishing for promotion first, and then we'll talk about associate to full. So the thing about the number, sometimes there's a real number, right? Like sometimes the university or your department or your school will say that you have to have a certain number of peer-reviewed publications in certain types of journals. Sometimes they'll even tell you, a lot of times at R1 universities, they will put specifications around where those publications need to be. If you're in a book field, you might have to have a book either under contract or out or submitted by the time you go up for your first promotion. So as you're thinking about publishing for promotion, a lot of the time, the mindset is just publish anything and everything because you need to have numbers. All right. That is usually the very scarcity mindset take on publishing for promotion pre-tenure. And again, like when I say scarcity mindset, it is not an insult. It is like very real. We are conditioned for that scarcity, right? We are told more is better. And then we act like more is better, even when the more is better attitude leads to fewer publications than what I call the curated pipeline would lead to, or the pipeline that doesn't just say publish anything. It says like, no, I'm going to publish the things strategically that I know I want to get out in the world in order to show the university that I have a contribution to make. Or like, forget the university, in order to show yourself, right? Or to show your field that you have a contribution to make. So one thing that can backfire when you're trying to publish for promotion is that you have this scarcity mindset. You're just trying to publish anything and everything, and things that probably you shouldn't be spending time on end up taking a lot of your time. And whenever you choose to publish something, there's like an opportunity cost, right? So when you choose to say like, oh, I have this old paper that my colleague and I were working on, and then she went on maternity leave, so it kind of fizzled out, but I need more papers out, so I'm going to resuscitate that paper in time for promotion. But maybe it's a paper that should just go to sleep forever. Like that should not get out there, because either it is no longer about what you are about, or it maybe isn't that great. You know, like maybe it fizzled out because it isn't your best work. Now, when you choose to try to publish it anyway, because the thought is, I need to get a lot of publications, it is standing in the way. You're spending the opportunity cost of publishing something better, something more aligned with your academic mission statement, something more like indicative of who you are and where you want your career to go. So this is to say the curated pipeline is the way to go. It is scary to cut things from your pipeline because of that deep-seated scarcity mindset. But just know that when you choose to publish things that probably shouldn't get your energy, and you usually know what they are, usually you know, if you like consult your gut feeling, you will know. They are standing in the way of you getting your more important papers out. So just when you're considering publishing for promotion, one of the things to think about is, and sometimes this is an explicit kind of criteria for promotion, is cohesiveness of your work. Now, you are in charge. You write the narrative, right? And literally, you write the narrative. Usually when you go up for promotion, you're going to write some kind of narrative. It shows up as a letter. Sometimes it's just called a narrative. And you get to shape that narrative and tell the story of how your publications relate to each other and what your career trajectory has been and will be, you control that narrative. So in some sense, right? In some sense, you can make anything fit, if you tell the story well enough. But on the other hand, if early in your career, you write an academic mission statement and you are clear about what that is, and your publications support that academic mission statement, then it's going to be so much easier to write that narrative. And it's going to be so much clearer. You have to do so much less convincing of the people who review your packet. Like, it's going to be clear who you are and where you're going. And that's what you want your publications to do. You want them to tell the story for you. Although you please stand in the agency of you control the narrative. It doesn't mean that you can't, that if you have some wild out of left field paper over here that you can't explain how that was part of the process, it doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean that things that to other people seem disparate but aren't to you, you can write the narrative so that you make a good, understandable story out of your publications. And also, you can make your publications tell the story for you. So in terms of publishing for tenure, publishing for your first promotion or your promotion, which is usually the tenure and associate promotion in most US and Canada systems, think the earlier you can come up with your academic mission statement and really be shaping your work to support that, the easier the story is to tell. The easier the story is to tell. Again, more on all of this in my upcoming series here on the podcast about stages of the academic career. All right. One other thing that I would be remiss not to say is the reverse engineering way to look at publishing for promotion. Okay. So I'm going to give you an exercise. So they give you something kind of concrete to work on. So here's the exercise. You put the year that you're going up for promotion or the semester that you're going up for promotion on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard or whatever. And then basically you make a column. Sometimes a cute way to do this is to get a blank piece of paper folded into fours. And then the two at the top are fall, spring, and then fall, spring. You can use 2 squares as your semesters. And in the top left square, write the semester and year that you're going to go up for promotion. And then just fill in backwards in time, each semester and each year on as many pieces of paper as you need. Then what you're going to do until today, right? So you basically have a map of each semester for the years between now and when you go up. Then you want to kind of write your goal in what papers do you want to have under review for that semester that you can include in your tenure dossier. So do that. And then you need to you reverse engineer, when would you have to have that paper submitted? Or when would you have to have that paper drafted in order to have it submitted and under review? Or if you want to make sure, some places, it has to be actually published, not just under review, or that there has to be a mix, right? Of things you published and things that are under review. And so then you just use the squares to reverse engineer that. So you need to know how long it normally takes something to get from submission to feedback, creating some time or leaving some time in there for something coming back as a revise and resubmit, and then you submitting again, so create a map of all the publications that are possible between now and then. Again, if you're very early, if you're year 1, then do this for your 3rd-year review kind of thing. Anyway, this is all to say that curation is important. Planning ahead is important. Having an academic mission statement is important, and telling the story is important. I feel like I want to address the numbers thing again. I know it's hard to believe this, but you have to kind of temper that like feeling of like, I just need to publish so many, many, many things with like, well, if I really got out a solid number of really high quality on mission publications, that would be better. So reverse engineer, don't worry so much about numbers, worry more about quality, about that your publications are out there representing you and supporting your academic mission. The reason I say this, and I know like you might be laughing at me or saying like, yeah, that's nice. Good for you. You already went up for full and got it, like whatever. I just think that your career needs to be about what you want it to be about. It can't be about checking boxes all the time. And even though like my philosophy on promotion is create and do the work that you most desire to do, make the contribution that you uniquely can make to your field the way that you uniquely can make it. And if you're university, you'll get promoted along the way. Like promotion will be a byproduct of that instead of having promotion drive what work you do. Does that make sense? I just think that it is a much more fulfilling career. You're just going to make a much bigger, better contribution and do your like world changing, field altering thing. If you let your brain and your desires drive what you publish for promotion instead of letting what is often like a guess at what the promotion committee might want to see or a guess at the number that is enough. Like letting that drive you is going to be so stressful and it's not going to lead to you doing your best work or feeling your best. And I think that holds for the promotion from associate to full as well. All right. So let's talk about the promotion from associate to full. This is a much more nebulous thing because if there's not very much information about exactly what you have to do to get promoted in the first promotion, there's less information in the second promotion. So what happens then is that many people don't go up, is that they'll just hang out at associate forever and they'll just be like, well, I'm really tired, which is absolutely fine. Like I'm exhausted. I don't want to think about it, blah, blah, blah. Yes. And also the way that you are going to get to the top of the pay scale is by getting promoted to full. And so for that reason alone, I want it for you. I think it's even more important when you have gone through that first promotion. And so then you are considered mid-career to really create what you want to create in the world. And again, same kind of attitude, but even like amped up a little, which is do what you want to do and the promotion will follow. Because we only know what to do. Like the only promotion we've gone through has been the first promotion, right? The promotion to tenure associate. A lot of times we think that we need to do what we did to get tenure to get full. And so you need to hustle and you need to kind of like feel like you're running on a treadmill set too fast, right? And you don't. So the good thing about there not usually being like a certain year that you go up, for full, like after a certain number of years, at least not in the US and Canada, in most institutions or many institutions. The good thing about that is that you can take the time that it takes to do the work that you want to do, to publish things that you want to publish, to go up for full. But that doesn't mean you should like just take your eyes off going up for full. You should really like think of that as your goal. But it's that what got you here won't get you there thing. And the difference between early career and mid-career, that is a difference in attitude, a difference in what you're building, a difference in the purpose of that full professor rank. For a tenure and associate professor, you are proving yourself. And for full, you're establishing your legacy. And I don't mean to say that in a way that is scary. And I know some people don't like the word legacy because they feel like it's too heavy, like it's too weighty. It's like, oh, that seems like, no, it's like famous people have legacies, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't have a legacy. But what I mean is that before you go up for tenure, you are really proving yourself as a scholar. And a lot of times you're trying to make yourself indispensable. You're trying to show, I don't agree with this, by the way, but this is what often happens. You're trying to show the department, the school, everything, that you are indispensable. They can't not give you tenure because they need you. But after that, you need to be creating a legacy where you are not the only person who can do the things you do. Your work is influencing many more people. You are creating something that will live beyond you. And it takes a different approach. So when you think about, you can do the same, fold the papers into quadrants and reverse engineer your publication journey to full professor. In fact, maybe it's like even more exciting to do that because you don't necessarily have to have like a hard, fast, like 5 or 6 year timeline. Like, what is the timeline? What would you like it to be? Maybe let the work that you want to do drive the timeline instead of the timeline driving the work. So think about like, well, what would you like your body of work to look like when you go up for full? And how long will that take? Think about it, that way. So I'll wrap up this episode by saying that you are the driver of your career. And yes, everybody wants to get promoted. Everybody wants to not get the rejection that not getting promoted means. And you get to decide what your career is like. You get to decide what drives it. You don't have to have a career that responds to promotion requirements. You can build a career that meets those requirements, of course, and creates what you want it to create. All right. I hope that if you enjoyed this podcast, that you will consider leaving a review and letting us know what you think. All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.